No one shoots a camera the same way, even when shooting the same subject, hence the YouTube challenge videos on that topic. So my first year with the Sony A7 IV will be different than others. That's okay. You need some perspective from different people who've used cameras in different ways. That's how you can hopefully get a bunch of opinions together and form your own opinion. Now I want to address some nitpicks, common complaints, what I love and what I am still cussing about. My doggy Renegade is kind of like, why are you just in the car? Something else that really matters to me as a hybrid shooter is the mode dial on top of the Sony A7 IV. It doesn't have a button that you need to press and to change the mode dial, and when switching between stills and video really fast, that really does matter. And speaking of those mode dials, setting those up to have your shutter speed, your codecs that you want, picture profiles that you want, really does make this camera still one of the champs in the hybrid sector of cameras. Gotta go pick this up. He knows I'm really not good with these kind of things. Some nitpicks, but not deal breakers. Doing some initial firmware updates. The camera has not overheated and shut off on me since live streaming for about 20 so minutes. And I've actually had this camera running around 30, 45 minutes with absolutely no problem. Still a little bit warm to the touch, but nothing that's a deal breaker there. Now I've had some freezing with the camera, but nothing that turned the camera on and off can't fix. I also don't like the fact that there is no charger for the battery, the Z battery this time around. I was going to use this. Not supposed to touch that part. I also had the idea to put the intro of this video using the A7 IV on this drill to spin around. And immediately came to my senses. But when walking with the active stabilization, the Sony A7 IV, like almost all the modern mirrorless cameras, they have a gimbal and the axis stabilization built into the camera. You will see a little bit of a twitch left or right when moving, and the camera is correcting for your movements. Maybe a quality control thing Sony should look into. My camera actually came with a speck of dust on the sensor, and I had a friend who had an A1. He's also had a speck of dust on the sensor, meaning had to go ahead and get a cleaning kit to get that off of there. Should I have a counter every time I say A7 IV? Ding, it pops up. Much has been made about the 1.5 times crop factor when using 60p 4K on the A7 IV. I had to admit, I was a little unsure how I would feel about that 1.5 times crop, because 1.5 times crop is a lot of crop. I have not had a limitation on it. So far, I've been in a situation with wide enough lens, enough space, I can back off, physically back away to shoot what I need to shoot. And it has been quite the advantage when using longer lens to get just a little bit extra reach and throw on there. And I have it on the back of a button for easy access. I actually have a hotkey for the crop in stills and video because it's that much of a plus, and it has not been a hindrance at all. If I was where I was 4 or 5 years ago, where I used a ton of slow motion, we all really used a lot of slow motion, maybe then I would have complained a little bit more, but since I've backed off on so much slow-mo usage, it's kind of one more reason why it hasn't really been too much of a thing to worry about. The EVF is another one that seems to get a whole lot of, I won't say hate, but dislike. As a person who doesn't use the EVF that often, like, I literally can go weeks without looking through the EVF of this camera. I have to be in some really bright sunlight or something like that to need to use the EVF. And my shooting style of holding the camera all over the place, EVF has not been super necessary. So for me personally, not much of an issue. Not the worst frame, you know, minus the clutter, but I love the Cinetone in the Sony cameras. Putting it inside of DaVinci Resolve, it does an incredible job of nailing skin tones. In addition to the Cinetone, the 422 10-bit color codec that I'm using right now in S-Log3 to shoot this video, absolutely so much fun. The coloring, if you really want to take advantage of no matter any of these cameras with the log footage and the raw footage, certainly you need something like a DaVinci Resolve to really get the most out of the colors. And I'm not even doing that insane of a color grade today for this video. There's still so much room to get even more out of this picture. I'm getting usable footage at ISOs 10,000 and 12,000. The built-in variable shutter It's huge, clutch even. If you still, somebody still say clutch. It comes in clutch and still shots. I'm using it right at this very moment, but it's a very cheap $25 blue light I got over my shoulder to cut all the black banding. It is the cheapest full frame of the newer model Sony Alpha cameras that you can get, and it is, in that regard, bang for buck when you put it in that context. I kind of have to wonder, is there some amazing voodoo or blood sacrifice that took place? Because out of all the videos I've shot over last year, there hasn't been hunting, even when using a third-party Rokinon/Samyang 35mm 1.8 lens with eye autofocus. So good. Here is what I'm cussing about though. But no, seriously, Sony not updating features in cameras that aren't even a year old. Just talk to any A1 owner who does not have the focus breathing compensation. That seriously puts a damper on the trust that you have, because even though I say this is more of a bang for buck camera, it's still an expensive camera. Again, more of an overall Sony thing, not necessarily a thing about the Sony A7 IV itself. There's a Panasonic size elephant in the room. The Panasonic A7 IV. Now, the thing with Panasonic and that L-mount alliance is the lenses are there, but at the same time, the lenses aren't there for some, depending on what you're doing. I do wish they would have stayed at that $2,000 price point with the A7 IV, and there's still room for some sales if Panasonic puts the heat on, which I hope they do with the A7 II, because competition amongst companies is really always better for consumers. So the honeymoon phase is over with the Sony A7 IV, 1 year since I got it. I know it came out months earlier, other places, but I got mine in February of 2022. And with that being said, I feel like even though the honeymoon phase is over, I kind of live in a place now where no matter the camera, I feel like I can ball out and do whatever shots, video, and if possible, live streaming thing that I need to pull off, regardless of the brand, because every brand nowadays can make a great stills camera. The video features are really kind of where the separation is in cameras like this, but if you're not going to be using LUTs like the Panasonic can do, if you're not going to be using that 10-bit codec to color grade and DaVinci Resolve or whatever coloring app of your choice like the A7 IV can do, I am not 100% sure if you are going to get the most out of this camera. But keep in mind, nobody gets a camera to shoot the same thing and uses it the exact same way.